Joining me this morning from Institute for Reforming Government, Attorney Jay Curtis with a recap of last night's debate between the two Supreme Court candidates. Good morning, Jake. How are you?
Good, Meg. How are you?
Good, thank you. Just feel like I talked with you yesterday. Oh, wait, I did. So
Right.
what's your assessment? I mean, were your predictions correct? I know you'd said that there was going to be a conversation in there about Elon Musk and, predictable kinds of topics, but surprises and things that were predicted. What's your assessment?
Yeah, so I was actually a little surprised. As I said yesterday, I thought it would be kind of just a relentless focus on Musk and Trump from the Crawford campaign. That was certainly a theme of a lot of her responses, and that covered some segments. But I was a little surprised at the focus by Judge Crawford on the abortion issue. That was, I think, somebody from the IRG team was tracking. It was the first 13 minutes of the debate was focused on abortion, and obviously that related to a question from the moderators, but she just kept on coming back and back to that issue. And so, you gotta wonder: is there something in the polling that shows that as being a key issue? That was obviously a key issue in both the 2020 and the 2023 Supreme Court. Kelly. So that would suggest to me somewhat of a shift in the focus. I thought Judge Schimel handled it well. He didn't really take the bait. She kept on going back to the 1849 law that's being litigated and completely talking out of both sides of her mouth, indicating that she wasn't going to prejudge a case, but then basically laying out a policy argument as to why the 1849 case should be overturned. And Judge Schimel basically just responded and said it was a legislative determination, and unless it's viewed as unconstitutional, it should be upheld, which I think is important because I think Judge Crawford is signaling that there is probably a constitutional right to abortion, which would obviously be kind of a watershed moment in Wisconsin judicial history.
So beyond that, I guess, and so you were saying that you were surprised by her obsession with abortion. I mean, I guess that's
Well,
sort of the
if you look,
theme of the Democrats, frankly, right?
yeah, as we talked about yesterday, if you look at, you can kind of look at the advertising, and that usually is a signal as to where a campaign thinks there's opportunities. And if you look at her public statements, if you look at her recent advertising, both digital and TV, there's been an extensive focus on Musk, and we need to stop Judge Schimel because he's going to simply answer Trump and Musk. I mean, that's been the theme. And it was just interesting that last night the theme of her responses, the overall kind of scope of the debate, it really was abortion, which again suggests that there may be a shift in how they think they're going to win this race. And I think Judge Schimel adequately responded. His response, in addition to kind of like the I guess the legal response that the legislature made the determination that it did, is that look, this is ultimately an issue for the people of Wisconsin. So I think he handled that well. I would say another interesting moment was there was a question as to whether or not the two candidates supported the voter ID constitutional amendment, and Judge Crawford did not answer the question. But Judge Schimel did. Said he was voting for the amendment. Now, I'm sure people could say, well, isn't that hypocritical? That's not a case. That's a constitutional amendment, which is, not frequently in front of the voters. And Judge Schimmel's a voter. I actually think it's fair for him to answer that question. Again, it's not a case. There is the possibility that the kind of scope of a constitutional amendment, if it's approved, could be litigated. And so that was the answer from Crawford as to why she wouldn't respond. But again, there's no current case, obviously, and so I thought that was telling. And then she talked about the litigation she was involved in, where she represented the League of Women Voters in voter ID cases. So it's pretty clear that she thinks it's poll tax, and she's not voting for the amendment. So I thought that was an interesting exchange.
Was she asked to either defend or explain her opposition? I mean, her stated opposition to voter ID. I mean, do you feel like she gave a good answer?
It was a very technical answer. She remember there were changes to the voter ID requirement from the initial version by the legislature, and her argument was that when she brought the litigation on behalf of League of Women Voters, that related to the first version that didn't have some of the provisions for a free state-issued ID card, and once those changes were made, essentially that satisfied the issues that she was litigating. So it was a very technical answer. I still don't think that she's going to be able to be unbiased if there's any sort of case relating to voter ID, right? Which is what this comes down to. I mean, we've been consistently talking about this, that the actual personal political preferences of the candidates really shouldn't matter. The question is, will they be unbiased in the event there is a challenge to some sort of legislative act that they either support or don't support? And so that's another point would be a ton of conversation and discussion relating to recusal. I actually thought it was interesting. Probably the average voter was pretty bored by it, but there was actually.
Oh, Jake, lost you. Your cell phone coverage must have given out. Oh, you're back. I'm losing you with your cell phone coverage. Can you repeat about the last minute of what you said?
Oh, sure. I thought it was interesting that there was a very healthy exchange relating to recusal. Both candidates. I actually thought that was actually probably the one point where I thought both candidates did a decent job explaining, what it means to recuse, why a justice should recuse. And because I do think we have to be a little careful where ultimately that's a personal decision on the part of a justice. And while certainly parties can bring motions to force recusal, ultimately that decision is the justice's. And so that was a very lengthy discussion. One thing we haven't talked about, Meg, is another kind of telling moment in the debate was when Curtis O'Brien, the case related to Curtis O'Brien was brought up.
Yes.
The sentence he received, just a horrible individual, where she sentenced this individual to 4 years in jail. The state was requesting 10. He was exposed to almost 60 years. She absolutely stands by that decision and basically articulated her position that she's going to essentially sentence individuals to the lowest possible sentence for purposes of public safety, which I thought Judge Schimel did a very effective job of pointing out that that's a very dangerous philosophy to have, right? That the position of the victims and the state, the prosecutors, should carry a lot of weight, and it's not a game of just trying to get to the lowest possible sentencing decision while still protecting public safety, which is essentially what Judge Crawford said her decision was. Wisconsin right now has done a lot of excellent work analyzing a lot of these cases, and they were all over that statement last night relating to that case.
Gosh, I don't know much about her, but it's really, I don't know if she's a mom or not, but I don't know how she can be so cold when it comes to, I mean, that weak sentence about, and I mean, it's not as if it was just one case. She has a history of weak sentences toward predators, towards those that have committed heinous crimes, some of whom have committed crimes against children.
Right. Well, look, I mean, we have 72 counties. She is a popularly elected judge from the most progressive county in the state, and so it shouldn't come as a surprise that a judge from Dane County has a history of extremely lenient sentencing decisions. I mean, this is, I'm sure if one were to go back, and again, I think Wisconsin right now has done this, if you go back and look at some of her statements when she was a candidate, that was a key plank in her campaign, that she's going to look at sentencing reform and ensuring that criminals, have every opportunity to rehabilitate, which is fine. But ultimately, as Judge Schimel said, you really need to be taking into consideration the position of the state and the victims.
Jay Curtis, thanks for joining me this morning. We're over for, and I appreciate you joining me in the middle of your commute and getting your kids to school. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to our conversation next week.
Thanks, Meg. Have a good one.
Thank you. Going to a break. We'll be right back on the WSAU Wisconsin Morning News.
Hear WSAU anywhere at 550.